in the shining halls of the Galactic Council, where the light of 1,000 suns reflected from polished marble floors and voices of power echoed through eternity. A storm of laughter filled the air. It was not the laughter of joy or peace, but of arrogance, the kind that only those who had forgotten fear could make. Seated around the vast circular chamber were the rulers and ambassadors of the galaxy's greatest empires. And at the far edge of the room, almost as an afterthought, sat a single human representative, a woman named Admiral Sarah Holt, her expression calm, her eyes cold. As the laughter rose around her like a tide, they mocked her, mocked Earth, mocked the silence of humanity. "Tell me, Admiral," hissed the serpentine ambassador of the Threx Dominion, "is it true your people cannot even protect your own colonies? The Vega system fell last month, did it not? I heard your soldiers begged for mercy before they burned." The room filled with cruel chuckles. Others joined in, the crystalline voice of the arcane speaker chiming like breaking glass. "Perhaps they finally realized what they are, children playing at war." The human did not answer. She simply watched, her gaze steady and unreadable. Her hands folded on the table before her, and that quiet unnerved them more than any words could. The council chamber, vast as a city, was built on Solaris Prime, the political heart of the galaxy, sealing a dome of glass, showing the swirling clouds of the world below and the endless stars beyond. Every decision that shaped the known universe began there. And in that chamber, humans had once been respected. They had helped build peace after the Great Galactic War. They had fought beside the Council's fleets when the old empires fell. But centuries of peace had softened the galaxy, and history had turned memory into mockery. "Earth is fading," said the Chancellor of the Council, his golden robes glittering under the light. "They have lost their colonies, their fleets, their pride, and yet they still demand a seat among us. I suggest we review their membership." Murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber, the old rival species eager to erase the name of humanity from the Council's records. Sarah Holt finally stood, her black uniform stark against the gleaming colors around her. Her voice was quiet but firm. "Review what you like, Chancellor. But remember, the silence of Earth is not surrender. It is a warning." The laughter returned, louder now, crueler. "A warning," mocked the Dominion's ambassador, his voice a hiss. "To whom? Your enemies? They already erased your borders." She looked at him then, her eyes sharp as steel. "No," she said. "A warning to you." For a heartbeat, the laughter faltered. The air in the chamber seemed to tighten, and even the Chancellor frowned. "Are you threatening the Council?" he asked, his tone sharp with offense. "No," she said simply. "I am reminding you of history." She turned slowly, her voice carrying through the vast chamber when humanity first came to the stars. "We were called barbarians, violent, unpredictable. We fought wars you only read about. We bled for peace you now take for granted. And when the galaxy needed saving, we did not hesitate to act. You call us primitive, yet you built your order on the ashes of our courage. And when the wars ended, you asked us to disarm, to be civilized, so we did. We gave you peace. And you gave us mockery in return." She paused, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the room. "You think we are weak because we are quiet? But I tell you this, when humanity stops talking, something terrible always follows." The chamber fell silent, the kind of silence that feels alive. Heavy, dangerous, the Chancellor leaned forward, his voice softer now but laced with irritation. "Are you saying your people plan to defy the Council?" "I am saying nothing," she replied. "Earth says nothing." And then she turned and walked out of the hall, leaving behind only the echo of her boots and the uneasy quiet that followed her departure. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the Dominion ambassador sneered, typical Terran arrogance. Words without power, the others laughed again. But this time, the sound was forced, hollow, as if they all felt something they could not name. Something that made their hearts beat a little faster. Days turned into weeks, and the laughter in the Council slowly faded into whispers, because strange things began to happen along the border sectors. The Threx Dominion reported losing an entire scout fleet near the Sol Corridor. Sensors picked up energy readings that didn't match any known technology. Colonies once thought abandoned began transmitting encrypted signals in Terran code. Old satellites that had floated dead for centuries suddenly reactivated, forming networks of communication around human space. "It's nothing," said the Dominion warlord. "Old machines glitching," but even he sounded uncertain, because the readings were precise, deliberate, as if someone or something was rebuilding the silence into something else. In the shadow of Earth's moon, far from the eyes of the galaxy, enormous structures began to awaken, ancient orbital platforms rotating for the first time in generations. Their surfaces covered in black plating that drank in the light of the sun. Deep beneath the crust of Mars, bunkers sealed before the Council's founding thrummed to life, their walls lined with machinery older than most civilizations. In the void beyond Jupiter, a ship that had slept for 300 years opened its eyes, sensors glowing faintly blue. A voice, mechanical yet strangely human, spoke softly into the emptiness. Command recognized. Reactivation complete. The old Terran defense network, the Iron Veil, was coming back online. Back in the Council, reports poured in from across the galaxy. Fleets disappearing near human sectors, long-range scanners blinded by static interference, trade convoys reporting faint human transmissions before vanishing into silence. Panic began to ripple through the powerful empires. "They can't possibly have this technology," argued the Dominion's general. Slamming his fist against the table, they were stripped of their weapons centuries ago, but Sira Lang, the new intelligence minister of the Council, whispered quietly. "Or maybe they just hid them." The Chancellor's face turned pale. "Hid them? For what?" "For when you stopped respecting them," she said. Meanwhile, on Earth, the oceans shimmered under quiet skies. The cities glowed softly in the night, but under that calm surface, war factories buried deep beneath the planet roared to life. Millions of drones swarmed through forgotten tunnels, loading ammunition, awakening reactors, and at the heart of it all, in an underground command center, sealed by codes known only to a few, a massive screen flickered on, displaying the emblem of old Earth, a blue circle, broken by a single white line beneath it. 3 words appeared in red text: Protocol Silent Dawn, initiated. General Aiden Cross, once retired, stood before it with steady eyes, his voice calm. "It's begun." One of his aides hesitated. "Sir, the Council will see this as war." Cross turned to him slowly. "They already declared war when they forgot who we were," he said. "Now, we'll remind them." Back in the Council chamber, the laughter was gone completely, replaced by tension so thick it felt like gravity itself. The Chancellor looked pale as he read the latest intelligence reports. "Human fleet activity detected," he muttered. "But this can't be right. There are thousands of ships. Where did they come from?" Sira Lang replied, her voice trembling. "You don't understand, Chancellor. They were always there. I just didn't want you to see them." He slammed his hands on the table. "This is impossible." She looked at him sadly. "No, it's human." And so the galaxy waited, holding its breath as the silence of Earth stretched on. No declarations, no transmissions, only a growing sense of unease spreading like wildfire. Trade routes closed, fleets fortified, and on the edge of human space. Small colonies began to vanish again, but this time, it wasn't humans dying, it was their enemies. Ships found adrift, hulls melted by weapons no one could identify. Sensor logs corrupted, and always at the scene. One message carved into the debris: "We asked for peace." Across the stars, fear replaced arrogance. Even those who once mocked humanity now whispered their name like an old warning. "Don't go near Sol," they said. "The humans are awake again, and deep within the dark expanse of the Milky Way." As fleets gathered and empires trembled, the old Earth broadcast towers began to pulse with light, sending a signal so faint it was almost lost to space. 3 simple words carried on every frequency, every wavelength. In every known tongue, "We are coming." And as the Council's leaders stared into their screens, the faint blue light of Earth reflected in their eyes. One by one, they realized the terrible truth they had mistaken silence for weakness, patience for surrender, and humanity's calm for defeat. But they were wrong, horribly wrong, because when humanity stopped speaking, it wasn't because they were broken, it was because they were building. And what they were building now would change the galaxy forever. The silence was over, and the age of fear had just begun. Beyond the council's marble towers and polished speeches, the galaxy itself was beginning to change. Rumors spread faster than light, whispers echoing through trade routes and border colonies. They said humanity was moving again, but not the way anyone expected. No armies, no declarations, just a growing emptiness near the Sol sector, as if space itself had begun to vanish. Merchant ships reported strange distortions along hyperspace lanes, instruments failing for minutes at a time. Captains swore they saw shadows shaped like fleets drifting just beyond sensor range, and when they tried to follow, they disappeared. Only static returned. In the grand archives of Solaris Prime, analysts dismissed it all as superstition. Human tricks, they said. Nothing more than interference, but those who had seen the quiet dark of Sol knew better. They knew that silence meant movement, and movement meant something was coming on the Terran border. The Vega system remained nothing but ash. Burned into memory and myth, the Dominion, arrogant and greedy, sent a salvage team to claim the ruins. But when their ships entered orbit, they found something impossible. The entire planet's surface was covered in a single pattern visible only from Orbiton, enormous human symbol. Carved into the crust, glowing faintly blue, a broken circle with a single line through it. The same mark that had once flown on Earth's oldest warships, below it. An inscription burned deep into stone. You wanted proof. The Dominion command tried to erase it, sending drones to bomb the surface again, but every explosive failed. Their systems jammed by invisible interference. Then, without warning, their entire fleet went dark. No explosion, no gunfire, just silence. The last transmission recorded before contact was lost contained a human voice, calm and distant. Testing complete. Back in the council chamber, chaos replaced arrogance. Ambassadors shouted over one another. "We must respond," cried the Chancellor, slamming his fist against the table. "We cannot allow a primitive species to challenge our authority, and yet," replied Sierra Lang quietly, "they already have." She projected an image of Vega's burned surface for all to see. The room fell into uneasy silence. "They left this," she said, "no message of war. No demand for surrender. Just proof," the Dominion ambassador hissed. "This is intimidation." "No," she said. "It's a statement they no longer need to speak. Their silence is their weapon." The Chancellor glared at her. "Then what do you suggest?" "We kneel." "No," Syrah replied. "We listen," but no one in that room knew how to listen anymore. Far from their arguments, deep within the Sol system, the truth was unfolding quietly beneath the black oceans of Neptune's moons. Massive shipyards long thought abandoned glowed to life, reactors igniting with blue flame. Ships unlike anything the galaxy had seen since the Dark Wars emerged from the ice. Black hulled, sleek and silent, their engines pulsing like the hearts of sleeping giants. And above Jupiter, within its endless storms, a fleet began to rise, 1,000 vessels hidden for centuries beneath layers of gas. Invisible to scanners, ancient yet alive, their hulls covered in Terran sigils and battle scars from wars no alien had survived to remember. The Terran Defense Armada was awakening. Not out of vengeance, but necessity. Humans had watched the galaxy laugh. They had heard the cruelty in every word, and they had decided that peace built on mockery was no peace at all. On Earth itself, the once peaceful capital of New Geneva had changed. The skies no longer filled with civilian transports, but with military drones moving in perfect silence. The streets quiet, the people watching news screens that showed stars flickering in the distance. They all knew, though no one said it aloud, something old had awakened. In an underground bunker miles below the city, General Aiden Cross stood before a holographic display of the Council's sectors. Red markers spreading like fire. "They mocked us," he said quietly. "They laughed at our silence beside him. Admiral Sarah Holt, now returned from Solaris, nodded. And that's what will make them fear us again. Not rage, not noise. But what we do when we stop explaining ourselves. Cross turned toward her. His expression unreadable. The Iron Veil is fully operational. Every fleet in the Outer Ring has been reactivated. And Project Eclipse is ready, are you sure? She asked softly. Once we move, there's no going back. He looked at her, the faint light reflecting in his eyes. They wanted to see our power, Sarah, he said. So we'll show them. Across the galaxy, the first signs of what was coming began to appear. The Council's deep space sensors picked up an energy surge so vast it registered as a false reading. Whole planets turning their nights into days for a fraction of a second. Then everything went dark. Moments later, communication relays in 6 different sectors stopped transmitting. When rescue fleets arrived, they found no debris, no wreckage. Nothing but drifting static on the surface of one destroyed relay station. Words were carved into the metal hull by an energy weapon so precise it could have written poetry. Power isn't loud. The message spread like a virus through the information nets. The galaxy that once laughed now whispered in fear. And then the rumors began, stories of black ships passing through asteroid belts without being detected, of entire Dominion convoys that vanished without firing a shot, of colonies that had exploited humans for generations suddenly receiving aid pods filled with Terran supplies marked with the phrase, "We remember our own." Some believed it was propaganda. Others swore they saw the ships themselves. Ships that didn't register on radar, didn't respond to hails, but left a faint blue light in their wake. Light that made even the bravest pilots feel small. The Council tried to regain control, issuing statements claiming human aggression will be contained. But those words fell hollow against the growing panic. Fleets began fortifying borders. Trade networks collapsed, and across 100 worlds, old memories stirred stories told to children about the Terran Wars, about how humans once fought gods and won, about how they burned 1,000 suns to end a single war. And as those stories resurfaced, one unspoken truth followed them: if humanity was truly awake again, no empire could stop what was coming on the edges of Terran space. Admiral Holt stood on the bridge of her flagship, the TSS Vengeance, watching the stars stretch before her like an endless sea. All systems ready, her officer reported. Fleet reports complete silence across the Council's communication bands. She nodded. Good. Let them wonder. She looked out into the darkness. Her voice a whisper meant only for herself. You doubted us, she said softly. Now you'll see what silence can do behind her. The fleet engines ignited. Silent, blue, cold. A wall of power moving toward the outer sectors, their arrival marked not by sound, but by the disappearance of every other signal in the region. And as the first Terran fleet entered hyperspace, leaving the pale glow of Earth behind, the galaxy began to realize that humanity's greatest weapon had never been their machines or their armies. It was their patience, the kind that waited centuries for the perfect moment, the kind that watched quietly while others mocked, and then struck once, cleanly, completely, leaving nothing but awe behind in every shadowed starport. In every trembling world that had once laughed at them, one question began to spread like fire. What happens when a species that mastered war decides to teach the galaxy humility? The answer was already on its way. Carried on blue light and silence, forged in centuries of restraint, and whispered in the dark corners of space by those who had seen too much. The humans are coming. The stars above human space burned like quiet witnesses. Too far to warn, too ancient to care. The galaxy had fallen into a nervous silence. The kind that comes before the storm no one wants to believe in. Trade ships avoided Sol, navigation buoys blinked with static, and across the Council's worlds, the word Terran was spoken in whispers again. People who had once laughed at Earth now locked their doors at night and watched the skies. There were no official reports, no declared wars, but something vast was moving behind the darkness. Something that had been sleeping for centuries and was now fully awake, far beyond the edge of the Orion Arm. A listening post belonging to the Arcane Confederacy recorded a single transmission, 3 words. Spoken in an old Terran voice, We are ready. Then, all their systems died in the command room of Solaris Prime. The Chancellor stared at a holographic map, its edges flashing red as more colonies went dark. They are doing this, he muttered. They have to be. His advisors argued in fear. Impossible. Humanity doesn't have this reach. Their fleets are small, their technology outdated, but even as they said it, new reports came in Dominion war factories offline. Pirate stations erased, no wreckage, no life signs. Just emptiness where worlds used to be. It's not war, whispered Sierra Lang. It's precision. The Chancellor turned to her. Then what is it? A demonstration, she said, her voice hollow. They're showing us what silence can do. Meanwhile, in the vast darkness between Mars and Jupiter, the true heart of the Terran power thrummed beneath layers of iron and ice. Humanity had built quietly unseen for generations. Their colonies working in secrecy, their engineers dying in silence to keep their promise. And now the silence moved like a living thing. Admiral Sarah Holt stood on the bridge of her flagship, the TSS Vengeance, her hands clasped behind her back. Eyes fixed on the stars ahead, report, she said, her voice steady. The officer beside her replied, all systems synchronized. Fleets Alpha through Epsilon standing by. She nodded, and the other fleets. Hidden, ma'am. Exactly as planned. Holt closed her eyes. Remembering the council chamber. The laughter, the insults, the disbelief, she whispered. They thought silence meant surrender. She opened her eyes again. A faint glint of steel behind them. Let them see what it really means, outside her ship's viewport. Space rippled as hundreds of vessels decloaked, their black holes glinting faintly under distant starlight. No lights, no signals, no words, just presence. The Reaper-class warships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their hulls crafted from neutron-fused alloys, their engines silent, their power drawn from cores older than the Council itself. They had been humanity's final creation before the Great Disarmament. Hidden away, forgotten even by most humans, now awakened one by one under Project Eclipse. Each ship carried the firepower of 1,000 fleets, but they were not built to conquer. They were built to make the universe remember. On the flagship's bridge, Holt gave the order. Open channel council frequency. The COM officer hesitated to speak to them. No, she said, to let them hear the silence. He nodded, opening the channel for 5 full minutes. Across every major world, every council chamber, every screen, there was only static and the faint sound of human breathing. Then the line cut. The message simple but unmistakable: we are listening now. The panic that followed was unmatched. The council ordered full mobilization, thousands of ships deployed to the Sol border. Media channels called it the Human Awakening. Propaganda painted humans as terrorists. The Chancellor addressed the galaxy in a trembling voice. We are facing a rogue civilization that refuses peace, but across the stars. Citizens whispered the truth. They're not attacking, said one miner. They're cleaning old recordings, surfaced images of Dominion slave worlds, of forgotten colonies left to die while the Council feasted on comfort. For the first time, the galaxy began to question its leaders. And still, the silence grew. Human signals filled the deep spectrum bands. Encrypted, impossible to decode, entire systems went dark as Terran satellites expanded outward like spider webs. Connecting planets light years apart in seconds? They're rewriting the network, said one council technician, staring in disbelief. They're building their own grid. Impossible, said her commander. No one can, but his words were cut off as every come. Unit! In the room flickered, and a calm voice whispered through the static. We can. Every system went dead. The technicians screamed. The lights dimmed, and when power returned, all displays showed a single symbol, the blue broken circle, the emblem of Earth on the far edges of the galaxy. Alien mercenaries tried to invade human colonies, seeking to claim whatever secret Earth had uncovered. They didn't last long. Satellites appeared where none had existed. Rail beams cut through ships with surgical precision, and when their reinforcements arrived, They found only silence and the same phrase transmitted over local frequencies. You doubted us. Even the most violent species. The Zarth, known for burning worlds to ash, refused to approach human space after that. Their fleets stopped mid-march and retreated, their warlord saying simply, "They are not prey, they are fire, back on Earth." General Aiden Cross watched the data unfold on massive screens in the Iron Veil command room. The holographic display painted the stars in red and blue. Every blue dot a human fleet, every red one a fallen world. "The Council won't stop," said Admiral Holt. Standing beside him, "They'll attack again." Cross nodded. "Let them. You think we're ready?" she asked. He turned toward her, his voice quiet but heavy. "We've been ready for 300 years, outside." Through reinforced glass, the skyline of New Geneva was dark. The city lights dimmed so they wouldn't reveal the glow beneath the glow of power rising from the planet's core. And then, for the first time since the beginning of the silence, the galaxy heard a Terran broadcast. It was brief, only a few words, spoken in perfect calm across every frequency. "To those who mocked our silence, this is not vengeance, this is memory. We remember every cry ignored, every promise broken, every hand that reached for help and found none. And now so will you." The message cut off, leaving half the galaxy's systems in blackout. Worlds that had mocked humanity now found their skies filled with streaks of blue light, fleets emerging like ghosts from the dark. The Council scrambled to send peace envoys, but none reached Earth. Every transmission was blocked by a single repeating code, unknown access. Permission denied. Their fleets advanced toward the Sol system, only to find empty space, no planets. No moons, no signals. Scanners failed. Navigation failed. And then one by one, their ships began to lose power, as though something enormous was draining the energy from the stars themselves. The last report from the lead vessel before it vanished read, "We see them. They're watching us." The silence that followed wasn't peace, it was anticipation. The quiet before thunder, the breath before the scream. Humanity's calm stretched across the void, and the galaxy realized that the storm wasn't coming anymore. It was already here, unseen, unstoppable, and waiting. In the heart of that endless dark, a human voice whispered through the static, not to threaten, not to boast, but simply to remind you doubted human power. Now you'll witness what silence can do. The storm began without a sound, the kind that the universe feels before it hears. The stars dimmed, not from shadow, but from presence. Something vast was moving through the void, unseen but undeniable, and across the galaxy. Every listening station, every outpost, every fleet command center picked up the same silent pattern. An invisible wave rippling across the spectrum. Every ship captain froze. Every admiral stared at flickering screens that showed nothing but blank readings. "It's interference," one said. "No," whispered another. "It's them," the humans had moved. Not with noise, not with threats, but with precision. Their fleets rising from black space like ghosts of forgotten wars. Engines that made no sound, weapons that left no light. The Terran armada had arrived, and their silence screamed louder than any cannon ever could. On the Dominion frontier, Admiral Korth had been confident, his ships numbered in the thousands, his fleets trained for planetary sieges. But when the first blip appeared on his radar, his stomach turned cold. One ship. His officers laughed, a scouting error. But as they watched, that single blip split into 10, then into 100, and before they could react, the stars themselves began to vanish, consumed by massive black silhouettes sliding through space. The Dominion fleet opened fire blindly, beams of red plasma crossing the void. The explosions lit up the darkness, but none of them reached their target. Every shot simply vanished into the black, like stones cast into a bottomless sea. "What are they doing?" Korth shouted, panic breaking through his voice. Then his ship's AI replied in a trembling tone, "They're not moving. Admiral, they're waiting," and then the waiting ended. Without warning, the void lit up, not with color, but with power, a single human ship. Larger than any station, unleashed a silent blast. A pulse of energy that erased the Dominion's front line in a heartbeat. No sound, no scream, only light that burned away everything it touched. And when the light faded, there was no debris. No trace of life, just empty space. The human flagship Eclipse drifted forward, its hull glowing faint blue against the darkness. Admiral Holt stood at its helm, her eyes hard but sad. "They asked for proof," she whispered. "Let them see it." The Reaper fleet moved in formation, their ships cutting through space like blades through fog. Precise, perfect, emotionless, for every Dominion fleet that engaged them. One simple transmission appeared on their comes before the end. 3-word silence was mercy. Back on Solaris Prime, the council chamber shook with chaos. Transmissions poured in faster than they could process, entire fleets gone dark. The Dominion capital is under attack. They've destroyed communications arrays. The Chancellor slammed his hands on the table, shouting above the noise, "Retaliate! All forces converge on Sol." But the defense analysts shook their heads in terror. "We can't," one said. "There is no Sol." "What?" "The system is gone from every chart. It's erased." The room froze. The only sound was the hum of failing power. How can an entire system disappear? Sierra Lang spoke then, her voice quiet. "They hid it," she said. "They don't want you to find them. They want you to find yourselves." "What nonsense is this?" The Chancellor barked. "They are exterminating worlds." "No," Lang whispered. "They're teaching you what you taught them, that no one comes to help." The attacks were not random. They were messages written in fire. The humans didn't destroy civilian worlds. They targeted shipyards, weapon platforms, power stations. Every tool of oppression the Council had used to control its people. And with each destruction came another signal left behind on local frequencies, a soft human voice. "Calm and weary, we do not seek conquest. We seek remembrance," when mercy was mocked. "You called it weakness when silence was given. You called it surrender, now you will learn the sound of consequence." On the far side of the galaxy, a refugee world called Meridian watched the human fleet approach. Its people panicked, but then something strange happened. Instead of bombardment, Terran drones descended and began repairing their shattered cities. Restoring power, dropping supplies, the people fell to their knees, tears streaming down their faces. "They came," whispered a young boy. "The ghosts came, and when the ships left, they left behind no soldiers. Only a small beacon broadcasting a single phrase, 'Humanity answers.'" Now the contrast was terrifying. Some worlds burned, others were rebuilt. The Council couldn't understand it. "Why save one and destroy another?" shouted the Chancellor. "They are playing gods." But Sierra Lang shook her head. "No," she said. "They are playing mirrors, mirrors. They show us who we are, they save those we abandoned, and erase the ones we enslaved. They're forcing us to see ourselves through their eyes." She looked around the chamber, tears glistening in her eyes. "They don't want our destruction. They want our reflection." Far from their words, in the heart of the human fleet, Admiral Holt stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring at a holographic map of the galaxy. Her second-in-command approached quietly. "Ma'am, Council fleets are retreating." "They've pulled back to defend their core systems?" Holt nodded. "Good. They finally understand." "Understand what?" He asked. "That this isn't a war," she said softly. "It's a reminder." Her gaze lingered on the star map, a web of light connecting every human ship, every colony, every signal they had built in secret over centuries, all of it moving with a single purpose: to bring balance back to a galaxy that had forgotten compassion. She thought of the words her mentor once told her, words that had guided the silence. "We are not here to conquer the stars. We are here to teach them how to shine again." Meanwhile, deep within the shattered Dominion capital, survivors crawled through smoke and ash, their skies blackened, their cities silent. And yet, amidst the ruin, something stirred. A massive structure untouched by the bombardment, a monument that had appeared overnight. Towering and cold, made of black steel and blue light, carved into its base were human words written in every known galactic language. "Strength without empathy is rot. Peace without sacrifice is fraud. Entire civilizations came to study it. No one knew how it had been built or when it simply was. Standing as a wound and a lesson all at once, the galaxy trembled under the weight of its new reality. For every fleet it sent, another vanished. For every lie it told, another truth appeared. The humans had become more than soldiers. They were now something elemental, like storms or gravity, inevitable, uncontainable. And through it all, the same message echoed. Soft but unstoppable, you doubted human power. Now you see its mercy. Now you see its wrath. In the council's darkest room, where no cameras could see, the Chancellor stood alone, his reflection trembling in the glass. "What are they?" he whispered, and from the shadows, Siralang answered. Her voice filled with something that was not quite fear and not quite pride. "They're human," she said, "and you should pray that they never stop remembering who they are." Outside, in the cold silence between the stars, the Reaper fleet drifted. Quiet once more, its lights dimmed, its weapons retracted. Its purpose fulfilled for now, Admiral Holt closed her eyes and whispered to the void, "Let them rebuild, let them learn. But if they forget again, if they dare to laugh again," she looked out into the infinite darkness, where the reflection of Earth's symbol glowed faintly against the black. "We'll remind them what silence truly means." And somewhere, faint and distant, as though carried by the stars themselves, came the answer of 1,000 worlds finally listening, "We hear you, humanity." The council chamber was no longer the center of peace. It had become the echoing heart of fear. The lights flickered under the strain of constant transmissions, and the great hall that once glittered with pride now trembled beneath the weight of panic. Reports came faster than the officials could read. Entire fleets missing, systems silenced. Planets that had mocked humanity now cut off from the network entirely. "This is madness," shouted the Chancellor, his voice breaking. "They're dismantling everything we built." Siralang stood quietly at her post, her eyes scanning the streams of data flooding the central screen. Her face pale, her heart sinking deeper with every line she read. "No, Chancellor," she whispered. "They're dismantling what we forgot." But he didn't hear her. He was shouting orders, demanding retaliation. His fear disguised as authority. "Mobilize every ship. Bring down their command centers. Burn their colonies." Yet even as he spoke, the generals in the room exchanged glances of dread. They all knew there was no finding Earth anymore. It had vanished, not destroyed, not hidden by some cloaking field, but erased from every navigational record, every archive. Even the Council's most ancient star charts showed nothing but empty coordinates. "This isn't possible," murmured Admiral Corrin of the Arcane Fleet. "A system can't just disappear." Sira turned toward him, her voice calm but trembling. "It didn't disappear, Admiral. It was never truly there, not for you." The room fell silent. Eyes turned to her as she tapped the console, projecting a holographic image that spun slowly in the era map of ancient Terran relay networks. Centuries old, long dismissed as relics. "They built this," she said, "a false grid, layer by layer, to make you see what they wanted, to hide what they became. We've been watching shadows for generations while the real Earth prepared in silence." The Chancellor scoffed. "Ridiculous. We monitored every Terran transmission. Every fleet movement, you monitored what they gave you," she replied, her tone sharp. "They let you laugh. They let you underestimate them, because that was their shield across the galaxy." Evidence began to surface. Black box records from destroyed fleets. Fragments of code buried deep in Dominion data. Every clue pointing to the same truth: humanity had never been disarmed. They had never given up their weapons after the Great Galactic War. They had simply changed the rules, hiding their arsenals beneath the surface of other worlds, disguising their fleets as asteroids, building their A's inside the very network the Council used. "They've been inside our systems for centuries," one intelligence officer said, trembling as he spoke, watching, listening. "Waiting," another shouted. "They knew everything: our defense codes, our fleet positions, even our debates." The Chancellor turned pale, gripping the edge of the table. "How could this be?" "Because," said Sira softly, You forgot what they are. Her voice lowered until it was almost a whisper. Humans are builders of endings. Meanwhile, far away, aboard the flagship Eclipse, Admiral Holt stood before a vast panoramic window, the stars stretching like cold fire beyond her gaze. Her reflection pale in the glass behind her. General Aiden Cross entered the room quietly. "They're breaking," he said. "The Council's fleets are retreating. Their alliance is crumbling." She didn't smile, didn't speak, only nodded once. "They thought power was control," she said. "But power is patience." Cross leaned against the console, staring out at the void. "Do you think they'll ever understand?" Holt's voice softened. "Not all of them, but some will. And that's enough." Her words lingered like a prayer, echoing in the quiet hum of the bridge. "That's how we survived, Aiden. We never stopped remembering who we were, even when they buried our name under mockery." Back on Solaris Prime, the Chancellor's desperation grew. "Open every archive," he ordered. "Find anything the old Terrans left behind." They uncovered records long thought erased, documents describing Project Revenant. Humanity's final insurance? The protocol written centuries ago, in case the galaxy turned against them again. The details were chilling. "If ever humanity is betrayed by those who swore alliance," the text read, "if ever our voice is silenced by arrogance, then we shall awaken the fire beneath the dust, and let the stars remember what we are capable of." Below the message was a signature older than the Council itself, signed simply, "Terran Command." The Chancellor's voice cracked. "They planned this?" Sierra nodded slowly. "They didn't plan war. Chancellor, they planned memory. They wanted to make sure the galaxy never forgot the price of peace." He turned toward her, anger burning through his fear. "And what of mercy, Lang? What of diplomacy?" Her eyes flickered with something like sorrow. "They gave you mercy for centuries," she said softly. "You mistook it for weakness, across dozens of systems. Human ships continued their campaign not of conquest, but of correction. They didn't destroy cities for revenge. They targeted weapons of oppression, systems of enslavement, and corrupt fleets that had turned their backs on their own colonies. Yet the galaxy didn't see justice. It saw vengeance. Propaganda spread faster than truth. "The Terrans are monsters," cried the Chancellor in his broadcast. "They will burn us all." But as he spoke, his words were interrupted by an incoming transmission that hijacked every channel across the stars. The screen turned to static, then slowly revealed the calm face of Admiral Holt. Her expression tired, her eyes steady. "You misunderstand us," she said, her voice soft, but carrying across every frequency. "We are not here to rule. We are not here to burn. We are here because you taught us silence meant defeat. Because you laughed while we buried our dead. And now we remind you silence is not surrender. It is preparation." Her image flickered, replaced by footage no one could ignore. Images of Council forces bombing human colonies decades earlier. Refugees ignored, worlds abandoned, all while the Council celebrated peace. "You called us emotional," she said, her voice almost breaking now. "You called us primitive. But emotion is what made us human, and what you lacked was the very thing that could have saved you empathy." She paused, her gaze hardening. "We will not erase you, Chancellor, because that is not our way, but we will strip your empire of its arrogance. And when this ends, you will remember us not as monsters, but as mirrors." The screen went dark, leaving a silence so heavy that no one dared speak. The Chancellor collapsed into his seat, his hands shaking. "She means to destroy us all," he whispered. "No," Sierra said quietly. "She means to remind us what we destroyed first." And as the words sank in, the chamber lights flickered again, a low hum filling the air as the Council's power grid surged. "What now?" shouted one of the aides, but Sierra was already watching the data streaming in. "They're not attacking," she said in disbelief. "They're giving us power. They're fixing what they broke." The screens showed Terran drones repairing satellites, stabilizing orbiting platforms, restoring energy to dying colonies. And then a final message blinked on the Council's main display. "Learn before we leave." That night, the skies of Solaris lit up in blue. a formation of Terran ships hovering silently above the world. Not firing, not threatening, simply watching. The sight filled the citizens below with awe and terror. For some it was divine, for others, judgment. And in the council chamber, Sira Lang whispered what no one else dared say aloud. "They could have burned us," she said, "and yet they didn't." Her eyes glistened with tears as she looked at the Chancellor. That is what it means to be human. And high above, aboard the Eclipse, Admiral Holt watched the light of Solaris fade behind her as the fleet turned back toward the dark. "We gave them another chance," she murmured, her reflection merging with the stars. "But if they forget again—" Her voice trailed off, the silence finishing her sentence. For silence was humanity's oldest promise, and its deadliest weapon. The fleet disappeared into the void, leaving behind only the faint whisper of an ancient vow echoing through the dark. Never mistake mercy for weakness. The stars had never looked so still. The galaxy that once burned bright with trade, chatter, and arrogance now floated in quiet awe, because the humans had gone silent again. Not defeated, not destroyed, but finished. And that silence was the most terrifying sound the Council had ever heard. Days turned into weeks without a single transmission from Earth or its fleets. Worlds waited for vengeance that never came, and yet everywhere. Humanity's touch lingered. Ruined weapon platforms turned into beacons, destroyed fleets rebuilt as monuments. Drones floating through the void, leaving trails of blue light like tears across the stars. On Solaris Prime, Sira Lang stood on the council balcony, watching the night sky pulse faintly. "They're still out there," she whispered, the Chancellor beside her looking aged, his voice trembling. "And what do they want now?" "Nothing," she said softly. "Humans never wanted anything. They just wanted to be left in peace." But peace was a word the galaxy no longer trusted. The silence had weight now. It pressed on every heart. Even in the farthest colonies, people who had once mocked the Terrans began painting blue circles on their walls, lighting candles beneath them as if praying. They whispered to the stars, "Don't come back angry. Come back merciful." For the first time in recorded history, the galaxy feared not war, but judgment. And then one night, the judgment came not as fire, but as a voice, soft, calm, and unmistakably human. It echoed across every known frequency, every starship radio, every comlink. A woman's voice, Admiral Holt's voice. "This is not vengeance. This is restoration. We gave you silence so you could listen. And now we speak so you can remember." Her words stretched across the cosmos, her tone not cold but sorrowful. "When we reached the stars, we believed we could build peace with honesty. You turned it into politics. We offered unity. You turned it into control, and when we stopped talking, you thought we were broken. But silence is not weakness. It's reflection, and in our reflection, we saw what you had become across hundreds of worlds." Her voice continued, carried on Terran quantum relays no one could block. "We do not seek empires. We do not seek revenge. But we will not let your lies define our history again." On the Dominion homeworld, people gathered in the streets listening. On arcane colonies, leaders shut off their broadcasts. But still the voice came through, unstoppable, like the memory of something long lost returning to claim its place. "We built the peace you destroyed," Holt said. "And now we remind you of what peace truly costs. Every child who cried unheard. Every world left to burn while you debated in comfort. Every colony forgotten by your greed. We carry them all. And we speak for them now." Her voice cracked slightly, the human ache beneath the steel of command bleeding through. "You may call us monsters, but monsters don't rebuild what they destroy. They don't teach those who mocked them how to feel again." In the council chamber, the broadcast played in eerie silence. No one dared interrupt. The Chancellor sat slumped, his eyes hollow. "She's not threatening us," he murmured. "She's mourning us." Sira Lang watched the holographic projection of Holt's face flicker on the screen, the faint scars on her cheek, the exhaustion in her eyes, and for a moment, she didn't see a general, she saw a mother scolding her children. "Tired but unwilling to give up, they're not gods," Sira said quietly. They're just human, and that's what makes them terrifying. Because only humans can forgive with one hand and burn with the other. The Chancellor turned to her, his voice shaking. Then what do? We listen, she said, finally. The broadcast ended with a single sentence, one that would be carved into the history of every world that heard it. We are humanity, the sound of mercy learned through pain. The echo of fire turned to light. Remember us not as conquerors, but as consequences. And then the transmission cut. Leaving every system across the galaxy silent once more, no one moved for several minutes, as if afraid that breathing too loudly might bring them back. In orbit above a dying star, the Terran fleet drifted like ghosts. Engines cold, weapons dormant, waiting. On the flagship Eclipse, Admiral Holt stood at the viewport, watching the dying sun flicker its last breaths. "It's over," said General Cross softly behind her. "For now," she replied, "they heard us." "But hearing is not the same as understanding," he nodded slowly. "And if they don't?" Holt turned her head slightly, her eyes reflecting the faint light of the star. "Then we remind them again," she said, her tone steady but heavy. "But I hope we never have to. I hope they learn below them." Earth glowed faintly blue, restored and alive. Its oceans calm, its skies clear. Cities rebuilt not with pride but remembrance at the old Terran Memorial Garden. Veterans stood among the statues, their faces lit by candles. They whispered the words of the broadcast as if reciting scripture, "We are humanity." The echo of fire turned to light. Children listened with wide eyes, learning not of war, but of the silence that saved them on the edges of the galaxy. Alien travelers began to see strange things. Starin drones assisting ships stranded in the dark. Colonies receiving food drops with no senders. Hospitals rebuilt overnight by unseen hands. A pattern began to emerge. The humans hadn't vanished. They had become something else, an unseen network of guardians watching quietly from the dark. One Dominion captain, saved from a collapsing star by an unknown vessel, described it in awe. "We hailed them. They didn't answer. But before they jumped to light speed, they left a message on our screens that said, 'You're welcome,' in time." The fear began to fade, replaced by reverence. The blue circle of Earth's insignia became a symbol of hope. Painted on walls, worn on clothes, projected in skies as a silent promise: if you fall, they will come not as rulers, but as the voice in the void, the memory that refuses to die. And while no one ever saw the Terran fleets again, their presence was felt in every rescue, every act of compassion, every moment someone chose mercy over pride. Because that was their legacy, not power, not destruction, but the quiet force that made the stars themselves bow their light. And somewhere beyond even the reach of known space, the Eclipse floated in the dark, its engines silent, its crew asleep in stasis. Waiting, the ship's AI hummed softly, replaying fragments of Holt's voice through the corridors. Silence is not surrender. It's reflection in the observation chamber. The ship's core pulsed once, faintly, as if responding to a call from far away. A distress signal lost in the void, weak but human. The AI recognized it instantly and whispered into the dark. Signal received, and then, as the engines began to awaken, the ship's log updated with 3 familiar words. "Humanity answers again." The galaxy had not seen war in months. Yet the silence it lived in felt heavier than any bombardment. The stars themselves seemed quieter, as if they too remembered what had happened, what had been unleashed, and what had been spared. Worlds that once mocked humanity now lit candles at night, tiny flames flickering beneath the blue symbol of Earth painted on walls. On ships, on hearts, there was no decree, no rule, no command from the humans, only their absence. And that absence changed everything. The council still met, but the laughter that once filled its halls was gone. The chambers that echoed with arrogance now trembled with guilt. The Chancellor, once a man of pride, now spoke with the weary tone of one who had seen truth and could never unsee it. "We thought we ruled the stars," he said in one meeting, "but we were merely guests in a house built by those we mocked." Sierra Lang stood beside him, her eyes distant as she watched the holographic map of the galaxy glowing in blue light. One by one, new signals appeared across forgotten colonies. Terran frequencies aiding broken planets, restoring life where the Council's greed had stolen it. "They're still helping," whispered an aide, voice trembling. "After everything we did to them," Syrah nodded slowly. "That's humanity," she said. "They never destroy for pride. They destroy to rebuild." Her words were quiet, but they spread, recorded, shared, repeated by every news channel. And soon, it became the new mantra of a galaxy relearning humility. On the Dominion homeworld, survivors gathered in the ruins of their capital, their skies scarred, their towers broken. But amidst the wreckage stood a monument, black stone carved with the mark of Earth beneath it. An inscription glowed faintly. "Mercy was our last weapon." Children touched it in silence. Elders bowed, and even the hardened warlords of the Dominion, the same who had once mocked Terran emotion, now stood with heads lowered, their weapons left at the gates. "They could have erased us," one of them said softly. "But instead they gave us reflection, and in that moment, the galaxy began to kneel not in worship, but in recognition. Across the far reaches of the stars, old rivalries began to fade. Former enemies now shared resources. Trade resumed not with arrogance, but gratitude. Fleets once built for dominance now carried relief supplies. Everywhere, whispers of Earth's guided decisions. "Do it the human way," they said, with heart for the first time. Compassion became currency, empathy became power, and peace felt earned rather than enforced. The blue circle became the emblem of unity. Entire generations born after the silence learned to honor it as a promise that strength was nothing without mercy, that silence could be louder than any war. Back on Earth, dawn rose over a world reborn. Cities rebuilt with simplicity, oceans calm, forests spreading again. But beneath its peace lay the pulse of a sleeping giant. Deep within the Iron Veil Command Center, old machines hummed softly. The fleet at rest, watching, waiting, Admiral Sarah Holt walked through the quiet halls alone, her uniform replaced with plain clothes. Her medals locked away, she paused before a memorial wall. Names engraved in silver light, she traced her fingers along the first-line Vega colony. Lost and avenged, her reflection looked older now, her eyes tired but alive. "You were right," she whispered to the names. Silence wasn't surrender, it was hope behind her. General Aidan Cross approached slowly, his voice low. "The Council sent another message?" She didn't turn. "Let me guess, gratitude." "Apology," he said. "They've established the Terran Accord, a law that forbids any empire from exploiting another world again." She smiled faintly. "And will they keep it?" "They will," he said, "because they're afraid not to."
Outside.
Children played in the restored streets of New Geneva, their laughter echoing where silence once ruled. Drones flew overhead not for surveillance, but for planting trees, rebuilding, healing. The planet that had once prepared for the end was now teaching the beginning, and yet above them, in orbit, the Reaper fleet still waited, silent and unmoving, like guardians made of shadow and memory, not to strike, but to ensure that peace remained peace every year. At the same hour when the silence began, a beam of blue light rose from Earth into the sky, visible even from distant colonies, and all across the galaxy, people stopped to watch. Heads bowed, hearts still, far beyond the reach of the living. In the black corridors of the flagship Eclipse, the AI core stirred, its lights faint, its voice quiet. Monitoring complete, it whispered into the dark. "Peace stable. No hostile activity detected for a long moment." There was no reply, only the hum of power flowing through the ship. Then, almost as if speaking to itself, it said softly, "Perhaps they've learned," but then, as if the universe itself responded. A faint signal appeared, weak, distant, desperate. A distress call, human in origin. Words broken by static, but clear enough to pierce the dark. "This is the colony of Elysia. We need help." The AI paused, analyzing, processing, and then the lights along the ship's hull flickered one by one. Awakening the sleeping beast, its engines thrummed alive. "Signal received," it said gently, Response initiated, and as the eclipse rose from the black, its shadow spread like a heartbeat across the stars, back on Solaris. Sierra Lang stood on her balcony, watching that faint pulse of blue light in the sky. Knowing what it meant, they're answering again, she whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek, not of fear, but of faith. And may they never stop, the Chancellor. Now, an old man looked up beside her. Do you think they'll ever return? He asked. They never left, she said, her voice breaking slightly. They just don't need to be seen to be felt, as the eclipse and the fleet disappeared once more into the infinite dark. The galaxy watched and listened, holding its breath. Because every being human or alien knew that somewhere out there, among the quiet stars, humanity still watched, still remembered, still answered. They were not gods, not conquerors, just something far rarer species that had learned how to carry power without cruelty, vengeance without hate, and silence without forgetting. And as the faint hum of Terran engines faded into eternity, one final message echoed across the void, soft, calm, eternal. When the stars cry out again, humanity will listen.